Welcome to the podcast. If you'd like to listen to an ad-free version of this episode and all of our episodes, then search True Crime Today Premium Plus on Apple Podcasts and press subscribe. That's our premium channel where all of our ad-free and advanced episodes live, all in one place. True Crime Today Premium Plus. Search it on Apple Podcasts and press subscribe. Even try it for 3 days free.
You're about to take a deep dive into one of the biggest true crime cases in the universe. Or, at least, on our part of the planet. From the Hidden Killers podcast and True Crime Today.
Welcome back, everyone. Today we're really diving into the latest in the Bryan Kohberger case.
Okay.
You know, the one with the 4 University of Idaho students.
Right.
Tragic story.
Yeah.
So his trial...
Been all over the news.
It has.
Yeah.
His trial was recently moved to Boise.
Okay.
And we've got a couple articles about his first court appearance there. And
interesting.
Get this. People were lining up.
Oh, wow.
Like 5 hours early to get a seat in the courtroom.
Wow.
So clearly this is a big deal still.
That's wild. Yeah, this case has captured a lot of attention.
For sure.
I mean, from the start, it's been a roller coaster.
Yeah.
And now with this change of venue, it feels like we're in a whole new act of this whole legal drama.
Yeah, and it really makes you think about, like, public perception and how much weight that carries, even within the judicial system.
It's fascinating, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, the fact that Kohberger's defense was able to actually successfully argue for this change of venue to Boise just shows you how much of an impact media coverage can have on trying to find an impartial jury.
Right, because they're worried about that.
Yeah.
Which is interesting, too, because there's this other thing going on, it's being called, like, the whole jumpsuit war.
The what?
The jumpsuit war.
Okay.
So Kohberger's lawyers really want him wearing street clothes for the trial.
Interesting.
And they're saying that that's...
I mean, I can see why they would want that.
Really?
Yeah.
You think it makes a difference?
I think it does. It's all about subconscious bias.
Right.
Right?
Right.
Like, jurors are told, obviously, you have to base your decision on the evidence that we're presenting to you.
Of course.
But studies have shown that what someone's wearing can actually influence people's perceptions of them.
Really?
Like whether they seem guilty or innocent.
Wow.
Yeah, there was a study done in 2010. It was published in Psychology, Crime, and Law. And they found that people who were shown images of defendants wearing, prison clothes, they were more likely to perceive those defendants as being guilty.
Oh, wow.
Than defendants who are shown wearing street clothes.
That's so interesting.
It's subtle, but it makes a difference.
That's really interesting.
So I get why the defense is concerned about every little thing.
Right.
But that could potentially put their client at a disadvantage, even their clothing.
It's like they say, you never get a second chance to make a first impression.
Exactly.
Even in the courtroom, right?
Exactly.
So new location, new judge.
Right.
It's like a clean slate.
You'd think so, but
yeah.
Well, not entirely.
Yeah.
From what I'm reading about Judge Hippler, who's now on the case.
Okay.
He seems like he's going to run a pretty tight ship.
What do you mean?
He's already emphasized the importance of, like, maintaining civility in the courtroom.
Okay.
And adhering to that gag order that's in place.
Right.
So he's setting a firm tone right out of the gate.
Oh, interesting.
Which, with a case this big, it's probably necessary.
Right. You don't want it to get out of control.
Exactly.
Because it could easily, with all the media attention and everything.
Exactly. Exactly.
I'm curious about this new judge, though. Like, what else do we know about him?
Well, one thing that I found really interesting from the articles is that he's already expressed some concerns about the trial date that they were thinking about.
Which is?
June, I believe.
Okay.
And he specifically mentioned the possibility of juror fatigue, which when you think about a case of this magnitude that could go on for weeks, maybe even months.
Yeah, it could.
It's a valid concern.
Right. And then you're not getting...
And then you have people who are just mentally checked out.
Right. You're not getting an accurate...
Exactly.
detail.
Exactly. You need those jurors to be fully engaged.
Right.
So the fact that he's already thinking about that suggests to me that he's really approaching this strategically.
Yeah.
He's thinking about all the angles, how to ensure that it's a fair and efficient trial for everyone.
It's like he's already thinking 10 steps ahead.
Exactly. Thinking 10 steps ahead.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's crazy to think about all the different things that could potentially derail this trial or...
With a lot of pressure.
Yeah, influence it.
A lot of pressure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and speaking of derailing, one of the articles mentioned a pretty big setback for the defense. Their mitigation expert passed away recently.
Oh, wow. That's a huge blow to their case.
Right.
A mitigation expert is crucial, especially in a case like this.
I was going to ask, what exactly does a mitigation expert do?
Yeah, so basically, their job is to present any mitigating factors during the sentencing phase, if it gets to that point.
Okay.
So things like mental health history, lack of prior criminal record, things that could potentially lead to a less severe sentence if the defendant is found guilty.
Okay.
So losing their expert at this stage, it's a significant setback for them.
Right, because they've got to scramble to find someone new.
Exactly. And it takes time to get a new expert up to speed on a case this complex.
Right.
All the evidence, all the details, it's a lot to process.
Wow, so they've got their work cut out for them.
Yeah, definitely.
And it just goes to show how even things that seem like,
That's totally unexpected.
Unforeseen can have these huge ripple effects on a trial.
Absolutely.
It's like a game of chess, this case, where every single move has these potential consequences.
I like that analogy. It's very fitting.
Yeah.
Every move counts.
Every move counts, for sure.
Yeah.
So this whole change of venue thing, it's a pretty drastic move, right?
It is.
I mean, to move this whole trial hundreds of miles away.
Right, from Moscow to Boise.
Like, what would lead a judge to even go that far?
Well, it all comes down to ensuring a fair trial.
Right.
And one of the biggest factors judges have to consider is the potential impact of all the media coverage.
Yeah. This case has been everywhere.
Exactly. And all that attention, while understandable, can make it really hard to find jurors who haven't already formed some kind of opinion about the case.
Right, because they've seen it on the news, they've read about it.
Exactly. And that exposure, even if it's unintentional, can create bias, whether conscious or unconscious.
So it's not really a fair trial then?
Exactly. Because they might be relying on information they shouldn't be, things that weren't even allowed in court.
And that's where the change of venue comes in.
Right. Moving it to Boise is an attempt to find a jury pool that hasn't been as saturated with the case.
So they're hoping people in Boise haven't been following it as closely.
That's the idea. They're looking for people who can be more objective, who can look at the evidence with fresh eyes.
Makes sense, but wouldn't that create some logistical headaches?
Oh, absolutely.
Moving an entire trial like that.
It's a massive undertaking.
Really?
Oh, yeah. You've got witnesses, evidence, the whole legal team.
Right. Everyone's got to pick up and move.
Everything has to be transported and coordinated in a whole new location.
That must be so expensive.
It is. It's a huge financial burden.
Really?
Travel costs for everyone, security for transporting the evidence, court costs in the new venue.
Wow. So it's not a decision they make lightly.
No, not at all.
It's more than just picking a new spot on the map.
Exactly. A complex decision with a lot of factors at play.
Wow. I never really thought about all that.
It's a balancing act, for sure.
Trying to make sure the trial is fair.
Exactly. That's the priority.
But also dealing with all these practical considerations.
Exactly. And the financial ones, too.
Yeah, it's a whole other side of the case you don't really hear about.
It is, but it's an important one.
For sure. Yeah, it really highlights how complicated this whole thing is.
It does.
It's a change of venue.
It's a big decision.
It is.
And it really underscores how much emphasis our justice system puts on having a fair trial.
Right. Even with all the public attention and everything.
Especially with that, yeah.
It's got to be tough.
It is. It's a delicate balance.
And that fairness, it's not just about the defendant, right?
Absolutely not.
Like the prosecution needs to be able to present their case properly, too.
Exactly. It's about making sure everyone involved gets a fair shot.
The victims' families, too.
Absolutely. It's about them as well.
It's crazy.
It's about making sure justice is served impartially,
Yeah.
based on facts.
Right.
Not on outside pressure or anything like that.
Right. It's got to be about the evidence.
Exactly.
It's interesting, right? Because we always focus on, like, the big things in a trial.
Right. The testimonies, the evidence.
Yeah, all that.
The arguments.
But then there's all these other decisions, like this change of venue.
Right. The behind-the-scenes stuff.
That can be just as important in the end.
Absolutely. They can make or break a case.
So as we kind of wrap up this deep dive into Kohberger's court appearance and this whole change of venue thing, what's your big takeaway? Like, what should we be paying attention to as this case moves forward?
I'd say keep an eye on Judge Hippler. He's new to all of this.
He is, yeah.
But he's making it very clear that he wants to run a tight ship.
Right. He wants to keep things fair.
Exactly. He wants a fair and impartial trial.
And he seems to be on top of it.
He does.
Which is good.
So I think how he handles things moving forward, like the trial date, the media, his interactions with the lawyers.
It'll be interesting to see what he does.
It will. It'll be very telling.
Yeah, it seems like we're entering a whole new phase of this case now.
We are. And as we've been talking about, even little details could have a big impact.
Right, like the jumpsuit thing.
Exactly.
Exactly.
It's a good reminder that our justice system is complicated.
It is.
Every decision matters.
Every decision matters. Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for taking us through all of this.
Of course. My pleasure.
It's been really interesting to kind of get this deeper look into everything that's going on.
I'm glad we could shed some light on it.
And for our listeners, we'll leave you with this.
Okay.
We've been talking a lot about the legal stuff.
Right, the procedures, the technicalities.
But it's important to remember the human side of this.
Yeah, absolutely.
This is a tragedy, and there are families who are still grieving.
For sure.
And they're navigating this whole legal process at the same time.
It's a lot.
So think about that,
Yeah, think about the human impact of all of this.
Exactly.
It's easy to get caught up in the legal back and forth.
Right.
But there are real people at the heart of this case.
And that's what matters most.
Absolutely.
Well, thanks for listening, everyone, and we'll see you next time for another deep dive.
See you next time.
In a world where the darkest secrets lie just beneath the surface.
They said it was an accident, but the evidence says otherwise.
Where hidden killers roam, unnoticed, in the shadows.
I think you would definitely be looking at a blend of toxic, very bad narcissistic personality traits, and they will be vengeful and possibly resort to violence.
Join Tony Bruschi as he uncovers the truth behind the most chilling cases.
They said it was an accident, but the evidence clearly says otherwise.
Each episode, we dig deep into the minds of those who commit the unthinkable.
To your point on narcissism, he thinks in his own mind how witty he is.
Yeah.
But he lost that jury. I was done with him in 2 minutes.
From unsolved mysteries to infamous crimes.
Geez, you've just talked about how you've taught yourself how to do everything under the sun. I bet you did a YouTube video, how to best kill somebody with a knife.
Hidden Killers with Tony Bruschi takes you where few dare to go.
How does someone with such a dark secret go unnoticed for so long?
With multiple new episodes every single day.
We're not just telling stories, we're seeking justice.
Listen now on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts. Just search for Hidden Killers with Tony Bruschi.